on the environmental side. How does it work in that field for non-advanced tear syndrome?
Well, she discusses a couple of really important topics, one of which is nuclear energy, the other is GM foods, both of which have encountered enormous amount of opposition from people who should either be ambivalent about them or should be very warm towards them. So nuclear energy, to me, it's just a cut and dried example of this, really. So you've got environmentalists who, back in the day, because of Chernobyl in particular, but also there were the 3 Mile Island and Fukushima and so on. Obviously, there had been nuclear accidents. And they didn't really like nuclear energy anyway, and that really put them off. I mean, I think it's actually completely illegal in places like Austria to build a nuclear power station. Germany famously went off them many, many years ago. And they didn't like them on fairly spurious environmental grounds. But of course, over the years, environmentalists have focused overwhelmingly on climate change. So for that, the question is really quite different. We've got to have energy. How can we do it effectively? Bearing in mind that renewables are nearly all intermittent, and we don't want to have coal and gas. What are we going to use? And as far as I can see at the moment, the only option is nuclear energy. But they are stuck in their ways, and it comes out of the hippie movement and all sorts of things, right? These people have never liked nuclear power, and they're not going to change their mind now, even though it's actually the only practical way of addressing this. GM foods, again, I mean, opposition to it is essentially superstitious, really. I mean, there is just simply nothing wrong with GM crops. There's a broad scientific consensus that these foods are not going to do whatever these people think they're going to do, cause you to have cancer or whatever. I mean, they're not just fine; they are really, really important for feeding the world, and in particular, golden rice, which again, every credible scientist thinks golden rice is a fantastic product. It's going to stop, or it does stop, any number of cases of malnutrition and blindness. But most of the environmental groups are completely against it and have effectively stopped it being used in several places around the world, to the great detriment of public health. Why are they against it? Well, basically, again, it comes down to a sort of romanticisation of peasant life, which is quite common in the environmental movement. They really like organic farming. They see GM technology as being like the absolute opposite of organic farming. They're not even that keen on fertilizers, these people. So it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I think Zion makes a very good argument around it, trying to explain what these people are thinking. From the outside, it seems completely insane. It really does.
And it seems particularly insane on, I guess, across the piece on all those examples that you've given, but in particular on the environmental side, because the environmentalists make such a song and dance about follow the evidence. We're just doing what the scientists say. They love to say that. And that's normally about starting up the case for climate change, which is reasonable, but selective on which scientists and which evidence they want to follow in these instances.
Yes, I mean, again, a very good point. It's obviously inconsistent. They're interested in the science that they agree with.
Yeah.
It's, I think, completely indefensible the way that they have scared people about both those technologies. But I mean, nuclear power, as Zion points out in the piece, there have been only ever a few thousand deaths as a result of nuclear power disasters, and nearly all of those are Chernobyl. There wasn't a single person killed at Fukushima. You compare that to the number of deaths that have been caused every year from just pollution from coal power stations being used, apart from anything else. It's just a completely disproportionate reaction. And the activists have been very much complicit in scaring the public about technologies that are effectively life-saving on a huge scale.